Welcome to Redditors. Please hit the like button. Let's get on with the video.
Doctors of Reddit, what was the thing that made you go oh god? Pediatric resident here. During my time in the NICU I had several moments. I think every one of us does. In one of my first night shifts a 500-gram preterm newborn on non-invasive ventilation stopped breathing. I immediately started to bag her, which usually works nicely to stabilize the patient. Didn't he work this time? I had the nurses call my attending to get here ASAP, but he was about 20 minutes away, which was way too long for the patient. I had to intubate an extreme preterm baby on my own for the first time. The patient became bradycardic very quickly. The nurse started chest compressions, while another nurse handed me the laryngoscope. For some reason I stayed relatively calm and just thought you better not F this up. I successfully intubated on my second try. Heart rate shot back up. O2 saturation followed shortly after. We put her on a ventilator and when we were all done my legs just gave out. I had to go back to the doctor's room. My whole body was shaking. Hospital in some small European town in the middle of nowhere. Farmers' land really. Very hot summers and very cold winters. Old people shower 2 times a year, Easter and Christmas, and whenever they visit their doctor. Basically make their pajamas their second skin over the winter, dressing up for work over them. Anyway, wife accompanied her man to the ER as he felt unwell and goes to use the bathroom. Slips on a mix of piss and water and fractures her femur. Needs to go into surgery. As an intern I'm asked to do a pre-op ECG. Some of the leads need to go on the chest, 2 on either side of the breastbone and the remaining 4 towards the left. I have to displace her left breast to do that. She clearly wasn't expecting to become a patient that day. I, even nowadays, feel sick talking about it. As I lift her breast there is a significant amount of curd-like crap under there. Probably some ongoing yeast infection linked to bad hygiene and the smell. I nearly passed out. Took a deep breath as if about to beat my breath holding underwater a cord as a kid at the pool and got on with it. After it was done I literally ran out of the room and out the ER to catch some fresh air. Not a doctor but an assisting nurse at the time. There are many memories from just 12 months working in an hospital. Top 2. 1. Obese farmer. Rubber boots he couldn't get off for like 2 months. Severe diabetes. I was assisting as the boots were cut off. Both feet awfully swollen. And the left foot's toes all dead and partly rotten. No wonder he felt some weird pain down there. 2. Explosive diarrhea from a patient with an iron problem in his blood. He sprinkled the whole bathroom with his dark and busily smelly feces as he tried turning around to the toilet in time. Poor dude. Was in for and just got a new hip joint. Was so sorry and embarrassed. I have a friend who is a radiographer and the one story he always tells me about is a male patient he once did an x-ray for. Apparently the guy wasn't feeling great and had some intestinal pains. Turns out he had a ginormous dildo fully lodged into him, which obviously presented itself quite clearly on the x-ray. My friend simply looked at the guy and all he did was nod, to which my friend replied with a nod. No words needed to exchanged. Literally saw someone have progression of a stroke in front of my eyes. My intern tells me that she's concerned about a patient because since the previous night he's had some right arm weakness. We go see him together. When starting out he is talking perfectly normal, but then all of a sudden he starts slurring his speech and half his face droops. Immediately called a stroke code, but he was outside the window for emergency intervention since his symptoms started the night before. When performing an emergency cesarean and the baby's head is lodged so hard in the pelvis that it just won't come out, it is really scary. I read an article a while ago about a doctor who was delivering a baby and the head was coming out but was stuck a bit, so the doctor pulled on its head and decapitated the baby. I can't even imagine the horror and pain everyone involved in that scenario felt. I was the patient in this case. I had come in because of a headache and my sick call doctor had asked me to get a CAT scan. I drove to another hospital to get one as they didn't have one on base. Everything seemed okay and while we were waiting for the results one of the nurses had brought me some medicine to help with the pain. Just as I was about to take it another nurse, practically superwoman, dived into the room and slapped the pills across the room. She then started telling me that I needed to lay down and they were going to immobilize me but that everything was going to be okay. Turns out my brain was bleeding and the medicine would have probably killed me right there. I'm sure the nurse after seeing the results must have at least thought oh, because she looked absolutely panicked when she first rushed into the room. After the pills were out of the equation she was very professional and quick. Kinda wish the happy juice they gave me shortly after hadn't been so strong so that I could remember her name and thank her. I am a doctor. I was saying that under my breath as we were losing a 13-month-old kid during a resuscitation. Not DR related, but during the third week of my second tour in the Middle East, many years ago, the building we were in was hit by a mortar round RPG. Something. Part of the building came in around us. As some of the dust began clearing, lying on my stomach in the debris, I saw that I was looking into the barrel of an M4 rifle and recognized the distinct glove on the hand holding the rifle. I yelled, "X, get your effing hand off the trigger, motherfucker," only to hear him a few feet to my left say in a low voice, "I don't have my effing rifle." I still have dreams about his reply. Somewhere in the melee, he has lost his hand and part of his forearm. That was the first up close and personal casualty of combat I had witnessed, and it took a while for me to get my head wrapped around the idea that a piece of his body was permanently removed. Not a doctor, but my dad is. This person once came in and they said they had an achy foot. They are too fat to look at it, so he looks at it and the nail is so long it's curly under his foot and into his flesh. I can't believe it only ached. I had a pet rat where one of his top teeth curled around inside his mouth and pierced out of his face right under his eye. I thought it was just a scab thing at first. Vet removed the tooth, but I'm surprised it didn't kill him before that. More of a grim internal OF whenever a new PT comes along, not realizing the prognosis I'm about to give them, and in their social history is listing all their kids' dependents. I am an oncologist. Not a doctor. But when I was delivering my oldest, the nurse caring for me had just got done telling my husband to settle down. The baby wouldn't be coming for hours. She then checked my dilation to prove her point to my husband, uttered the words, "Oh there's the head," and ran out of the room to find the OB. I'm not a doctor. However, every year I ask one of my family members, who is an ER surgeon, to tell me the most unique injury that he has operated on that year. One year, a young man was driving in icy conditions, wasn't wearing a seatbelt, slid off the road and crashed into a telephone pole. He was ejected and flew into a barbed wire fence. When the individual arrived at the ER, my relative was given a cooler. Inside was the guy's face that was sliced clean off from the fence. His job was to quickly pick out all the debris from the face and rush it into surgery to reattach it. Long story short, wear your damn seatbelt. I volunteered in the ER as a kid when this old diabetic came in. Both his legs were covered in gangrene. The med techs and nurses had to scrub and bandage his legs. The smell of rotting flesh will stick with me for life. It was horrific. Honestly, diabetes is one of the scariest chronic illnesses out there. It's manageable until it isn't, and then your everything is effed and you've lost your legs. It terrifies me. Not a doctor, but a nurse. Peds nurse to be exact. Seeing somebody's blood pressure as 30/11. That had me panicking. Anytime a kid pulls their trach out, that thought runs through my head. I walked into a patient's room, who was on hospice but was not expected to pass, and they were dead. I hadn't been a nurse very long and I freaked. They'd been given months to live and I guess they were just done. The first time I saw one of my kids seize, I was freaked. I was at home with a patient once who suddenly wouldn't wake up. Had to call 911. I was kinda freaked then too. One time somebody was bleeding a little from their foot but said it didn't hurt, and I started to assess it. Turns out all of their toes were barely hanging on by a skin flap. I went in for heart surgery at age 12. I was 170 centimeters at the time. This is important to remember. I walk into the children's hospital to be admitted. The staff look at me and seem confused. They take me to the ward and the staff there are more confused and now slightly concerned. I see my bed. It's a crib. My heart surgery was something typically found in infants. It's meant to stunt your growth. My growth was stunted, but my parents are giants. A stunted giant is an average sized person. So my chart said stunted growth. The staff scramble to find an adult bed in a children's hospital. My anesthetist arrives and is stunned. He has me reweighed and confers with the other anesthetists. They didn't think I was going to be so big. They give me pre-operation knockout drugs. I'm still alert when they come to wheel me in. I remember the nurse going, "How are you awake?" Dunno. Maybe because I'm adult size. In recovery there again was a crib provided. After the heart surgery I reached 187 centimeters, less stunted, still small in my family. Pediatrician. Every kid that comes into the ED needing resuscitated from abuse. Those kids are the ones that keep me up at night. You're the yin to that ugly yang. Doc, remember that. You are the antithesis of that evil. Infinite respect and admiration. A patient. She was an obese lady who had bilateral arthritis in her knees. She looked me in the face and said, "This is because I'm fat, right?" She was right, but I had no words. She was so heartbroken. There was a clinic patient with a colostomy who was not performing good maintenance. He used to tape a plastic shopping bag over his ostomy. You would smell him before you saw him. There was no amount of mint oil on the planet that took the smell away from the room, and it hung there for days. It also didn't help that the guy was a raging putz who was non-compliant and likely on drugs. I mean, not much after a while, but I do remember this guy with his renal function in every way but the right one. He had collapsed in the outpatients department while waiting for his heart clinic appointment. After he's resuscitated and everything, I'm asking him how much he drinks. He reeked of booze, and he says around 2-3 bottles of whiskey. Now that's a fair bit for a week, but people always underestimate, so I go to clarify. So 2 or 3 bottles a week. Any beer with that? No. 2 or 3 a day, and sometimes some beer. Yeah, how much beer would you say? He then starts seizing on me and his vitals drop through the floor. Yeah, he was drinking so much apparently the 2-3 hour wait for his appointment resulted in him going into withdrawal and seizing. You ever try to correct someone's electrolyte levels when their blood is mostly alcohol? It's a bad time. He arrested multiple times and it took us a solid 3 weeks to get his blood work anywhere near normal. This dude would be stable for a few seconds and then immediately swing into horribly unstable. Can't believe he was walking around like that for months beforehand. His blood had enough alcohol in it you could have run a car off it. If someone had lit a match around him I wouldn't have been surprised if he straight up exploded. Not a doctor but a radiographer. I once x-rayed a patient's pelvis looking for a Buzz Lightyear toy. They'd put it inside them and then the wings had deployed so it got stuck. You've got a friend in you.